The church bells in the dusty frontier town rang loud, but the bride's hands trembled. She clutched her newborn baby girl, wrapped in a thin white cloth. The pews were filled with whispers, and the air grew tense. Her groom had vanished, leaving her abandoned before God, family, and strangers. She stood at the altar, eyes wet with shame. Women turned their heads in judgment. Men shook theirs with scorn. The baby cried softly, her tiny fists clenched. Just when the silence grew unbearable, the church doors creaked open, and a tall, silent rancher stepped inside, boots heavy with dust. The rancher's face was weathered by sun and storms, his hat casting a shadow across sharp, unreadable eyes. He said nothing as he walked down the aisle, spurs clicking against the wooden floor. The bride lowered her head, clutching her baby tighter, fearing ridicule, fearing rejection once more. The rancher stopped before her. With quiet strength, he took the child gently from her arms as though she belonged to him all along. Then, turning to the crowd, his voice finally broke the silence. "She won't stand alone. Not anymore." Gasps spread through the congregation like prairie fire. The preacher paused, Bible in hand, unsure if this act was salvation or scandal. The bride lifted her tear-streaked face toward the man. His eyes held no mockery, only steadiness, a vow unspoken yet clear. Outside, the wind rattled the church shutters, dust swirling in defiance. He wasn't a man of many words, but in his silence she felt a strength more binding than any promise. The baby quieted in his arms, her tiny gaze fixed upon the cowboy who had claimed them both without hesitation. Rumors swirled quickly after the ceremony dissolved into whispers and stares. The townsfolk scattered into the streets, gossip riding faster than horses. "A man like him taking a fallen bride with a babe," muttered one woman. "He's crazy or noble," said another. The bride walked beside him silently, her head bowed, heart pounding. The baby rested peacefully against his chest. They reached his horse, a great chestnut stallion. With surprising gentleness, he lifted her into the saddle, placing the baby securely in her arms. Without a word, he mounted behind them, reins in hand, and rode away from judgment. The trail stretched wide under a blazing sun. The rancher's land lay miles beyond town, hidden by rolling hills and wild grass. The bride dared to glance at him, curiosity battling fear. "Why did you do it?" she asked softly. His gaze stayed ahead, scanning horizon and sky. "No woman should carry that shame," he said finally, his voice low, gravelly but firm. She held her child close, heart aching with gratitude and confusion. This man, unknown and silent, had given her more honor in one moment than anyone else ever had. Hope flickered like a fragile candle inside her. They arrived at his ranch by sundown. It wasn't grand but sturdy, built by sweat and solitude. A small herd of cattle grazed in the distance, their silhouettes dark against the fiery sky. He dismounted, then helped her down carefully, his hands steady as iron yet gentle as wind. She clutched her child, staring at the log cabin, humble yet promising shelter. "You'll stay here," he said simply. She nodded, overwhelmed. For the first time since her shame, someone had claimed her place. Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and leather. It wasn't a palace, but it felt like belonging. Nights in the Wild West were cruelly silent, broken only by coyotes howling across the plains. The bride lay awake beside her baby, staring at the timber roof. The rancher slept near the hearth, rifle propped beside him. He hadn't spoken much since bringing them here. She wondered if he regretted it, if tomorrow he'd send her away. But then the baby cried, her tiny wails piercing the darkness. The rancher stirred instantly, rising from his blanket. Without hesitation, he held the infant, rocking her against his chest. The sight carved into her heart like scripture, silent strength in tender arms. Morning brought the smell of coffee and frying bacon. She rose, baby in her arms, to find him already at work, splitting wood outside. His shirt clung to his back, muscles bending with each strike of the axe. He paused when he saw her, nodding toward the fire where breakfast waited. "Eat," he said. She obeyed quietly, watching his movements through the cabin window. This was a man carved from the land itself, carrying burdens without complaint. She realized he wasn't just silent, he was alone. And now so was she. Perhaps together they might learn to fill the emptiness. Days turned into weeks, and the bride, once abandoned, once mocked, began to find rhythm in her new life. She cooked meals in the small kitchen, washed clothes by the creek, and tended to the baby with patience only a mother's heart could know. The rancher continued his work, riding fence lines, branding cattle, hauling hay. But every evening he returned, sometimes with supplies, sometimes only dust. Yet always his eyes found hers, a quiet exchange deeper than words. One night she whispered, "Thank you." He paused, removing his hat, and replied softly, "You belong here." Her heart trembled at those words.